Welcome everybody to this episode of O365A. We're going to start a series around extending Microsoft Copilot. So to kick it off, we're very happy to welcome Sebastien Levert, who is a Microsoft Senior Product Manager, and he works on M365 Copilot extensibility. So welcome, Sebastien. I'll just turn it over to you. You can give a quick intro and tell us about, kick us off with Microsoft Copilot for 365 extensibility.
Awesome. Well, thanks, folks, for having me today. I'm quite excited. I'm happy to be able to represent Canada. Let's go, folks. So I'm Seb. I am a PM on the M365 developer experience team, where we build all sorts of tooling for developers and makers to extend the capabilities of M365 Copilot. So my team is responsible from underlying libraries that validate stuff that we don't really get to see in the world, to we build all the developer tooling that exists to integrate with Teams Toolkit, which is the pro code option for folks to extend M365 Copilot. And what is really cool is that we announced a couple of days ago all of our Wave 2 capabilities for M365 Copilot, and there's so much to say about extensibility. We did have a little bit of a spot in that announcement, but I will be able to go way deeper today in our discussion to go and kind of understand what's all available in the box when you have M365 Copilot. What can you do to make it even better?
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about why you'd want to extend Microsoft 365 Copilot, and just at a high level, how you go about it.
So the first question is very interesting. Why? Why would you care? Like, when you think about it, when you're in BizChat, which is our Copilot experience, you go in the chat experience, and you ask questions to Copilot. You ask to summarize. You ask to do analysis of a document set, or do analysis of your emails to say which one should I tackle first. Well, all of the things that you do with BizChat are based on data that lives inside of 365, right? So it's emails, it's Teams messages, it's documents, there's a bunch more of these different data sets that are going to be added through times to make sure that you have a great experience. So why would you care about extending? What can you get more? But first is, maybe you're working with data that does not live in M365. The perfect world, all your data lives in M365, but probably you do not want to run on Excel for your ERP. You probably don't want to run on SharePoint lists for a CRM. So what you want to do here is to bring some of that data in. So there are really, you want to be able to ask questions in the context of Copilot that could mix and match data that's coming from the outside world, your CRM, your ERP, your HR management system, and literally do a cross-reference with what's internal to your documents, your chats, your emails, to augment what Copilot can do for you. Think about the scenario where I'm meeting with this person because I'm trying to hire it. I'm trying to hire this person. Can you tell me when is that meeting? What I should get prepared for? Give me everything about his resume, and what's the job description already? Like, what is he applying for exactly? What do we promote? This is a mixed bag of data, right? It's a bag that's coming from your HR system where you're promoting your job descriptions. It's potentially internal for the resume. It's Teams. So it's really a matter of mixing it all up and getting an answer that is relevant, that can cite stuff from all over the place, and then giving you the best use case possible for it. So for me, that's the why. It's because you want to bring data from outside and do it in a way that feels natural to the end user. The end user is always, think that the end user always spends time in BizChat, right? That's your new homepage. That's my new homepage, honestly. So if all my data also resides there, I think that's a really, really cool use case, and there's so much more that we can do also with that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then I guess data is one thing, but also if you have a custom application, interfacing with that lets you, we're going to talk about agents later, but lets you use custom applications and the whole workflow of Copilot too, right?
Exactly. Think about, let's say, let's take again our HR scenario. Okay, perfect. He was good. How do I want to send my notes back to that system to then make a decision and say, okay, go, we hire them. Well, we want to be able to say, okay, agent, hey, HR agent, please hire this person. Their starting date should be this date, and do all the paperwork for me. And that is, you don't want to go to that app. You're in the context of BizChat. You took your notes somewhere, and you just want to pass it in. So yes, that there's bringing data, but also reaching out to these apps, workflows, services that exist in the outside world, either ones that you're building as a customer, as an organization. You're building a bunch of internal systems, right? Like, who doesn't have internal systems that can be either built by makers in Power App or whatsoever, or maybe you have pro code people that are doing C# or Java or whatever. But also maybe you're subscribing to services, HR services, CRM services, ERP services. How do you want to go back to them and act on it? That's the best way to do it.
So Seb, just a question. I know that you mentioned it, that your team is responsible for a lot of things, but so let's start out from like the high level, from as a developer, even though I'm not one, but I have a question. Given the nature of your team, so like what tools or libraries are available for developers to start building this stuff? Like, so we want to start like really top level. How can you or how does your team enable these developers to build these things?
So the first tool, and we think about this tool as being our call to actions to developers, and it's called Teams Toolkit. Teams Toolkit has been the toolkit that has been there for years now to build initially Teams apps. And then Teams apps became M365 apps that you can have available in multiple hubs, in Outlook, in Office.com, in Teams. Now what we're bringing to the toolkit is the ability to customize Copilot as part of the Teams Toolkit. So Teams Toolkit is the one thing you should install. You need VS Code, so you need to have Visual Studio Code on your machine. It's free, it's open source. You go, you get it. You're a dev, you probably already use it. Like 90+% of the devs are using it. You go to the extensions marketplace, you type Teams Toolkit, you get Teams Toolkit, you're good to go. And that's it. You can now, new project, you go, you select Copilot agent, and you're off to the races to be able to build an app. And what is interesting, you mentioned that you were not a dev, but what is great is no matter if you're a dev or you're not a dev, the way to distribute these apps, the way to distribute these customization is through an M365 app. So it respects the same governance, the same life cycle, the same guideline, the same deployment policies, the same security that you have in place for any other apps that live in M365. So we're not reinventing another thing. We're just packaging it now as part of what basically every admin has to deal with today in TAC, in the Teams Admin Center, or if you're a partner, to Partner Center to publish your app to all the customers are Teams customers.
Awesome.
And there's Teams Toolkit. Then afterwards, there are a couple of other tools that either are baked into the product that you can turn on, turn off, depending on what you are, but also we provide more tooling for experience or advanced scenarios. For example, we have a tool that has been there for the last maybe 3+ years. It's called Kyoda. Kyoda is a tool that deals with APIs. The world run on APIs. That's how systems are communicating with each other. That's how Copilot can reach out to the outside world. And Kyoda helps you with connecting your APIs, your enterprise APIs, to M365 Copilot. So depending on the level of complexity of your customizations, you might need to bring in Kyoda, for instance. The debugger experience that lives in BizChat is something that my team also owns, where you can just go in BizChat and you just do dash developer space on, you hit enter, and now you're in a whole new world of how BizChat reacts, and it gives you a lot of really interesting insights on how it got to the results that it's showing you right now. So it's a way to debug AI, which is really hard, because debugging AI is debugging somebody that's very stubborn at not giving you the same answer every time. So it's definitely a big challenge. So depending on that, there's a bunch of tools, but mainly you start with Teams Toolkit, and the rest you just progress through your experience.
That's awesome. What about for those of us that aren't developers? Like, is there a low-code option, especially specifically in connectors? Like, I understand you can use Power Platform to do like quite a few things now with connectors. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the pro dev that I just talked about. The exact same capability, the exact same experience lives also in the makers world. Initially, the first experience that you're going to think about, and it's still a very valid one, it's Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio offers you to extend Copilot for Microsoft 365 Copilot. Sorry, name changes. We do that here at Microsoft. Microsoft 365 Copilot. So you can go and you can add new agents to M365 Copilot in the exact same. So in the end, what you're creating is exactly the same thing, just that you're using another set of technology. It's a lot more UI driven. We guide you to the step. There's even what is really, really cool in Copilot Studio is that there's a conversational experience. So you can actually use AI to build an AI agent. So you're going to converse with the builder, and it's going to create you like everything it needs for you, which is really, really cool. Or you can just flip to the, when you know what you're doing, you can just flip to the configure tab and do it all there. So that's the first experience. It's Copilot Studio. It's part of the M365 Copilot license. So it's not a custom agent that you're building. If you're building an agent, what we call a declarative agent, that is an extension of M365 Copilot. It's part of your regular licensing for M365 Copilot. Then now we introduced a couple of days ago a new thing. It's called the Agent Builder. The Agent Builder is, let's call it like a simplified version of Copilot Studio that lives in BizChat. So you're in BizChat, you can say, create a new agent. It pops up, super nice UI. You do it all. You have access to the conversational element also. You can do that, and you can publish directly from there. So it's a very, very complete set of capabilities from the maker to from the end user that lives in BizChat, from the maker that lives in the Power Platform, or to the dev that actually lives in Teams Toolkit. And if you want to extend it, like you want to go super deep, well, as I said earlier, APIs are what runs the world. And that's exactly what Power Platform offers, with a bunch of existing connectors to virtually all the systems that exist out there that are business oriented. And if your system is not there, you can roll out your own custom connector and then connect to it to do some very specific tasks. Either connect to your HR system, do that approval, roll out the start date for somebody, whatever you want to do there, you could roll out your own custom connector for it. So I would say that in these cases, you're really much on the verge of becoming a dev when you start pulling out Power Platform connectors, but you're just there where it's the division between a maker and a dev becomes very blurry, and it's on purpose, because maybe sometimes you have just enough. ChatGPT or the GPTs in themselves, they have the exact same experience or a very similar experience with bringing APIs. We're not doing that the same thing inside Microsoft, but in a very governed way, which is very different to what OpenAI does. So I'm great question there, because yes, the experience is not just for devs, it's for anybody that wants to customize Copilot, basically.
Nice, thanks.
What are some of the common challenges that developers are facing when they're trying to use the toolkit or trying to use the studio to extend Copilot?
The first thing is this is a very interesting question. The first real challenge is AI in itself. Dealing with AI is a very different challenge than dealing with prescriptive flows. You don't know exactly what's going to be the output of what AI will give you. So one of the things that early developers are facing, all the challenges that they're facing initially, is how do I tell AI to, hey, here are my guardrails and stay within these boundaries? It's not just, hey, tell me something, because then every single time it's going to tell you something. It might tell you something every single time, but it's never going to be the same thing. It's never going to be the same result. It's never going to be the same representation, same visual representation. And sometimes it might be a little bit frustrating and when you think about the end user, that every time you ask a question, it's never the same thing that you get. In the end, yes, you basically get the exact same answer, but you don't get in the same format. So first is getting used to AI. The second thing is, and that's the challenge of, how do I say that? That's a challenge of software engineering in general, is my data is somewhere, but how do I get that data? How do I connect that? How do I authenticate to that data? And that is something that we're really working super hard into overly simplifying as much as possible. We don't want you to spend weeks of understanding authentication flows for software engineers. I would break the entire goal of extending Copilot, right? We want to make it super easy. So first thing that we do is everything that is in M365, you don't need to think about it. We handle it. So when you ask questions for a chat, for a doc or whatsoever, it's all there. If you connect to an external API, we're going to detect it for you. We're going to know, oh, that's the type of auth that it uses, and we're going to try to make it happen for you. And if not, then we give you all the docs on how to tweak it to make it happen. So that's definitely a second challenge. The third challenge is, once you get it working, is the improvements afterwards. Tweaking a little bit, because when you're going to tweak, you're not coding anymore, right? You're writing to you're prompting. So there's really very few lines of actual code that you're doing. What you're doing is you write a beautiful text that represents the persona, that represents what the user is, who we should be targeting, how we should respond. And then you want to say, oh, you know what? I want to change something. And then the results become wildly different. So it's all of that balance of going back and forth. There's a lot of trial and error in AI, and it's kind of part of the experience. And that's why AI is still not ruling the world today. It needs a lot of love to make something happen. And I would say these are really the three bigger challenges that we see, and we're seeing that with all the partners that we're working with while we were in preview for all that stuff. That those were the things, and that's what feeds our backlog internally in my team. Say, hey, we need to simplify the experience for all of these developers, because we don't want them to spend time there. We want them to spend time delivering value for their business and not figuring out all these really hard things.
So Seb, with the like you mentioned before, that Copilot inherits like all of the security, compliance, governance, all that stuff from just the M365 as a whole. So what are maybe some security considerations for integrating with like external applications? Like, so Copilot is contained. Is there additional considerations that developers should have in mind when they are, working with external sources?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is off. Like you want to make sure that you're not just opening up the floodgates of your API to anybody that wants to call in. The first thing is you want to make sure that who's calling in is who's calling in, that there's no pretending to be somebody else. And we have a flow in BizChat or in the extensibility world called OAuth 2.0 that we support entirely. And you can come with your M365 identity, call the API, and the API will actually know who you are, who you're calling, what's your tenant ID, and so on and so forth. So it can really tailor the experience based on who you are. So we're always giving back the right results to you. So that's the first thing. That's security blocking the entry to that. The second thing is, as an admin, when you publish an app, we always want admins to have their say in what's rolling out to users. So maybe we want to have these blocks, or maybe we don't want to have that app available. I want to block it from my organization. Maybe it's a third-party app. Maybe it's something that internally was published. So we really respect the entire governance of these apps, either through the admin catalog, where some like an internal team can publish an app for approval, then it can go through a number of revisions before it's actually approved and deployed to everybody. And same thing that for apps that are coming from Partner Center. The third thing is the one major hurdle that we have in AI is when we generate it, or generative AI, when we generate an answer, where is that data coming from? Was it made up? Because also that's one thing, right? Like LLMs, the kind of the brain of these AI solutions, they know so much things. They can make up so much stuff. How do we know that when the data is coming back, it's the right data that references my data and not just something that could put me? It's a little bit different than security, but it's trust. I don't trust the data because I don't know what's coming back really. So one thing that we put in extensibility, for example, is to have the options that every single record that is referenced will have a citation. And you can customize that citation, and it can be a link back to your system, which, oh, it's really the right record. Okay, cool. We're good to go. So this really, really increases the trust level of a user using BizChat. It's like, okay, not only it told me that, I don't know, I'm late for a task, but it also told me which task, and I can go see the actual task in my system that I'm going to be logged into, and I'm going to be able to prove that it's the right thing. So definitely that is something that is super important, and it's not just available for internal M365 content, but it's also available for content that lives outside the boundaries of M365 to make sure that we present it in a way that it's trustable for the end user.
That makes a lot of sense. And Sebastien, you've mentioned agents a couple of times, which is an overloaded term in AI. And then, of course, with Copilot, we have connectors and plugins. Do you just want to clarify the term agent as you're talking about it for all our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the AI version of it. There's the M365 Copilot version of it. I'm gonna touch on both. So we need to think about agent as an autonomous entity that can execute workflows, interact with your data on the behalf of the user that is calling it. So it's more than just, like, for a long time in M365, but even outside, we were referencing a lot of bots. Like, bots are kind of a conversational thing that you talk to. Agents are kind of the evolution of that will be able to also take proactive actions. Maybe every day it's going to want to go back to a system, give you a report. It's going to go back and maybe check on something, validate stuff, all AI based and just ask you for permission to, I don't know, complete tasks, for example. So agents in that sense is really an entity that is autonomous that you can talk with, that will do a lot of things in the background for you. It's your personal assistant on a very specific domain. In M365, what it means that an agent is an autonomous entity that can do multiple things, that can reach out to your content that lives in SharePoint, to your connectors that lives in Microsoft Graph, that can connect you to the web using Bing and the index that we have. And it can also reach out to any external system that you reference in via what we call a plugin. So the plugin is what delivers the connectivity to the outside world. When we think about agents in M365, it's all that. So an agent can have reference to connectors, reference to SharePoint content, reference to web, reference to as many API plugins that we call as you want. And this is really how we're presenting them. We used to call them copilot extensions in the past. Now, when we announce it, we want to make it really clear that we're at the beginning of our agent roadmap, or our agent journey at Microsoft, but these things will become way bigger than what they are today. They're really on the path of becoming fully autonomous, fully automated, and really useful for the end user. It's not just another conversational experience. It's way more than that, where we're going to be able to do to get to that point when we get there in a couple of ignites or build.
Before we get there, what is one of the most interesting agents that you've seen built to date?
So the first agent that I saw ever was just a really fun one. And it was just fairly non-business driven, which was doing summarization of documents, really, really complex documents, but all in prose. It was doing it as a poem every single time. That was awesome. Okay, is that really useful? Absolutely not. But it got me thinking about, okay, so if it can do that, it can do so much more. One of the ones that I've seen lately at Microsoft last week was our hackathon. It was really interesting to see how people were coming up with all these crazy ideas. One of them being a person in our team. One of our sister team is the Microsoft Graph team. That handles our docs, handles our samples, handles our SDKs, handles all of that. And literally, it made it created they called it the Microsoft Graph Mastermind. So you were discussing about you were in a discussion with the Microsoft Graph Mastermind, and it was able to. We're asking a question. I need to do that. How do I? Like, how do I get the list of I'm a dev. How do I get the list of all the teams that I'm a member of when I code an app? And it was giving me all the information about it. It was automatically generating a snippet for the code in the language that I was specifying. It was scaffolding me like a Hello World program to actually be able to call it. It was helping the user with the authentication that needed to happen. So it was more like of a dev persona. The person that was using it was absolutely stunning because it was super, super, super useful. It was putting everything in context for them. So it was ready to go, and you could just go code in just like 15 seconds later. He's now an expert of that endpoint of Microsoft Graph. The one that we're seeing a lot of the teams going with is, and I'm pretty sure you worked in an organization where they use acronyms for basically everything. TDP, TCP, RDP, whatever. Like at Microsoft, we have an entire glossary of all the acronyms. But we have to know that sometimes the acronym is being used in up to, I think the last time I checked, there are like 20 different contexts where the same acronym can be used for wildly different pieces of tech. So what they built is based on the context. I work in this team. I'm on a chat. They talk about TTP. What does it mean? And then they were providing all of that data as documents, as they were restricting the scope of the search in SharePoint to a specific document library where they knew where these things would pop up, and they were able to give you 99% of the time the right acronym based on what you were asking. So how many times in a Teams chat I see that every day? How many times in a Teams chat you ask, guys, I'm new, what is whatever acronym? But now what you can do is you can actually bring the agent in the conversation and say, hey, agent, what's this acronym? And then you can share it for everybody. So that's a really cool use case that I've seen acronym there. Simple, nothing super complex, but it delivers the level of delightfulness that I like when it needs to be super useful. So that was really cool to see in the last couple of weeks building these things.
Awesome. I'm going to be starting to ask BizChat to wrap all my inbox items from now on. So
it's absolutely possible. I've seen crazy things happening there. Playing with the who BizChat is, like playing on the persona that responds back is one of the like really interesting things. Something we've seen really interesting thing is when you do that, it's part of the instructions of your agent that you can now customize. You were not really able to do that back before with BizChat, but just asking BizChat via an agent to say, you know what, summarize me everything like a sixth grader is absolutely phenomenal. The simplicity that comes back from the summarization is just plain perfect. You want to share, like, what is this concept for somebody? It's amazing to see that. It just removes all the complexity, especially for me, is not like native English speaking. It's amazing, like how I can overly complicate my sentences just because I'm coming from French and everything is so complicated in French. I just try to mimic that in English. Doing that, like rewrite this paragraph in sixth grade level is amazing. So there is we have an agent at Microsoft, which is the sixth grader reviewer, which is you just basically shoot content to it and it spits it out back to you in as a sixth grader. Super useful for anything you want to do. Is a good tip that we got from a sister team.
It's a great scenario. That's awesome.
It's simple.
All right. Before we wrap, just sort of, I guess, a question: if someone wants to get started with agents, what's sort of like the best one or two resources to hit up to just get started?
The best way to get started, I would say first watch the Wave 2 announcement that we did a week ago. I think it's going to give you the really high level pitch of what we think about BizChat and how we think agents play a role in this new wave of capabilities in BizChat. The second thing is aka.ms/M365 copilot dev in one word, which is our dev portal that caters for both makers and developers. And you can just go and start. And it's really meant to be read as a decision guide. You want to build this kind of thing? Here's the options you have. And here's how. And here's a tutorial that will get you up to speed. So we really think that this is a really, like, it's the one landing place that we send everybody to. And it's written in a really simple way to make everybody successful. We've tested that dev center 1,000 times with 1,000 different people, and we're really getting good results. So I would be the best way to start. Go to our docs, aka.ms/M365 copilot dev, And
Can a grade sixer understand it?
I hope so. It's not. We didn't pass it through that agent yet. Maybe we should. But it's definitely a really cool dev center, and all the information for everything, customizing M365 Copilot. It's all there. So that's your best first resource, and you're going to be able to have a lot of fun extending M365 Copilot.
Awesome. Well, we'll include it on the blog post that accompanies this. So I want to thank you, Sebastien, for kicking this series off. So you gave a really good intro all up, the different ways to extend Copilot, and more importantly, the why and the how. So I want to really thank you for coming on, and really looking forward to how this evolves over the coming year.
I'm really looking forward to see what customers start building with. I can't wait to see like community calls and Twitter posts and LinkedIn posts on people building really cool stuff. I'm really, really looking forward to that. And we're happy it's out. So go try it, enjoy, and if there's anything, hit me up.
Super. Thanks, Sebastien.
Cheers. See y'all.